Yes, today we are going to see ABC costing, what we call activity-based costing. Today we are living in a world of wholesome competition. If we do not calculate our costs accurately, so we run the risk of closing down our business. So it is very important to know the cost of a product. The cost of a product, that is, cost of production, is in the hands of the business, whereas the selling price is already fixed on the market. So, cost is in our control, therefore we need to calculate the cost per unit of the product accurately in order to determine a selling price which has already been fixed on the market. So the cost is in our control, but the market price is in the control of the buyers. Traditional costing, in traditional accounting costing, we calculate the cost per unit by using a blanket rate, like machine hours, labor hours, number of employees, and so on. These bases do not reflect the accurate cost per unit of a product. So in this case, when we add a marginal profit to the cost of the product in order to determine the selling price, so we cannot compete on the market because of higher selling price. But in modern accounting, many businesses make use of activity-based costing. This costing system calculates the cost of a product, that is the cost per unit, by using activities. So, the cost per unit is calculated by using the level of activities which exist in an organization. This will give an accurate cost per unit, and therefore when we add the profit, the margin of profit, we can compete on the market by reflecting the selling price that already exists on the market. So in order to understand the concept of activity-based costing, we are going to see an example. Suppose there are 3 friends. After their high school certificate examination, they decided to go for dinner. So, 3 friends, A, B, C. 3 friends, they ordered soup and dinner and dessert. A ordered a potato soup costing $60. B ordered a tomato soup costing $50. And C ordered a veggie soup costing $30. And they ordered dinner costing $100, for B $50, and for C $150. Dessert, A ordered an ice cream costing $80. B has throat infection. He does not order any dessert ice cream. And C ordered ice cream costing $80. So, after the examination, they decided to go to a restaurant, and these are the soup, dinner, dessert that they ordered at the restaurant. So now, the waiter will bring the bill, so they have to pay. for soup 140, and 300 for dinner, and 164. So in all they have to pay how much? They have to pay $600. Okay. They ordered soup, dinner, this side, and this is the bill that they have to pay. So normally, since they are 3 friends, they will divide by 3, and each one will pay how much? $200. They will not say anything in front of the waiter. They will just give $200 each, and they will pay the bill. But internally, B is thinking he has to pay only $100 because he has taken soup and dinner costing 50 rupees, $50 each. And A has to pay $240. And C has to pay $260. Okay? What happened? The cost per unit has been calculated by using a blanket rate. This is called a blanket rate number of person. Else it could have been calculated individually for each. For A has taken soup $60, dinner $100, and $80 for this side. He has to pay $240, but he paid only $200. B did not take any this side. He has to pay only $100. How much he paid? $200. C has to pay $260, but how he paid only $200. So this is the cost. The cost has been wrongly calculated because it has been based on the blanket rate, that is a number of friends. So if we have to calculate cost per unit, we need to calculate cost per unit accurately. How this cost per unit could have been calculated accurately if it was based on the number of activities. Soup $60, dinner $100, this side $80. For each one, it was calculated based on the number of activities. There will be no issue. So in this case, he has to pay $240. How much he paid? $200. There is under costing of product. He has to pay $100, but he paid $200. This one is over costing of product. And $260, he paid only $200 under costing. So in order to avoid under costing, over costing of product, so we have to calculate the cost per unit based on the number of activities. On the number of activities, soup, dinner, this side. It should have been calculated on individual product for each person. Then we get an accurate cost. So in this case, what will happen? Next time will be go out for dinner with A and C. No, there will be problem. There will be an issue. But if there is issue between friends, it does not matter. But if there is problem in business because of calculating costs, because of calculation of cost per unit based on the blanket rate, this will cause problems in business. So we have to calculate the cost per unit based on the number of activities. So in other words, we are referring to activity-based costing. Most businesses in the modern economy, they are using what we call activity-based costing. They are calculating the cost of the product based on the number of activities, because this will give rise to accurate cost per unit. Then if we get an accurate cost per unit, then we can add a margin of profit which will reflect the market price. Else, the business will have to close down. Many businesses in the past, in traditional accounting, they use a blanket rate to calculate costs per unit. At that time, it was okay. But today, we are living in a world of wholesome competition, so we cannot calculate cost per unit based on blanket rates, machine hours, labor hours, and so on. We have to calculate cost per unit based on the number of activities. So, hope you have understood properly what we mean when we say activity-based costing. That is, the cost of the project will be calculated based on the number of activities. So, in other words, activity-based costing contributes to calculate an accurate cost per unit. If we can calculate an accurate cost per unit, then we can calculate an accurate selling price. That is, a selling price which is reflected on the market. We will take a second example. In this example, we are going to see how the banking system make use of the activity-based costing. A bank provides services like ATM services, check facilities, standing order facilities, and other services. And all services will be charged to the customers. No services will be given free to the customers. The customers will have to pay for these services. If the bank is providing a service, a standing order service to a client, so the client will be charged for this service. Now let us see this one, ATM services. To install the ATM, it costs money. It costs $60,000, $60,000. Installation cost to install the ATM services. And there are 1,000 clients. Assume there are 1,000 clients for the bank, and installation costs 60,000 ATM services for the ATM services. So ATM cost per client, according to the traditional method of costing, it will be divided by the blanket rate, that is 1,000 clients. So $60 will be charged to each client of the bank. That is, the account of the client will be debited by $60 per year. Now, what happens now if a client is not using the ATM service? Still, we are charging the client for this service, but it is not using this service at all. He is abroad most of the time. He is not using the ATM service. So why we have to charge the client $60? So this is the traditional way of calculating cost per client. That is, we take a blanket rate, that is the number of clients, then we calculate the cost per client. Now, if you have to calculate the cost per client accurately, without creating any discrimination, so we have to use the activity-based costing. That is, we can calculate the cost per client accurately depending on the number of times the client is using the ATM service. It will be charged according to the number of times the client is using the ATM. If the client is using the ATM 50 times, A is using the ATM service 50 times, B 100 times, D 150 times, E 200 times. C is not using the ATM service, therefore we don't have to charge C the ATM cost. So ATM cost per client will be $60,000 divided by how many times the client has used the ATM, 500 times in total. So $100 will be charged to the client depending on the number of times the client is using the ATM. So A is using the ATM 50 times, so A will be charged 120 times 50, 6,000 times. B is using 100 times, he will have to pay $12,000. C is not using, so no charge will be in the account of C. D D is using 150 times, so he will have to pay 18,000. E is using 200 times, therefore he will be charged 24,000. In total, the cost of ATM $60,000. This will reflect the accurate cost of the client. Is if client C, this one, if the bank is using the traditional costing method, so we will have to charge $60 in the bank account of client C. So in this case, he will be demotivated because he is not using the ATM service. So he will go to another bank which is using activity-based costing. That is, he is calculating the number of times the client is using the ATM service. So instead of using the traditional costing system to calculate cost per unit, cost per client, we can use activity-based costing, which will take into account the number of times the client is using the ATM. So this will be an accurate cost. The client will have to pay 6,000, A, B 12,000, C will not be charged any amount, D will have to pay 18,000, and E will have to pay 24,000. There will be no issue. The client will agree to pay because they have used the ATM services. But if we charge a client, he is not using the ATM service, so it will be a discrimination against this client, so he may be demotivated and close his account at the bank and to go to other bank which is using the activity-based costing. So this is the second example to explain to you how to calculate cost per unit, cost per client accurately by using the activity-based costing. Later on we will come with a work example on activity-based costing, how to calculate cost per unit accurately. So for the time being, until then, good. Yes, today we are going to see a question on activity-based costing. Details of two products were given. Actual sales and production, 5,000 units for product A, 8,000 units for product B. Direct labor hours, 2 hours per unit for product A and 5 hours per unit for product B. Number of orders, 30 orders for product A and 50 orders for product B. Number of batches, 45 for product A, 25 for product B. Number of setups, 40 for product A, 60 for product B. Special parts per unit, 2 for product A and 5 for product B. Overhead cost details were given. Activity, setups, cost driver, number of setups, 60,000. Special part handling, number of special parts, 40,000. Material handling, number of batches, 35,000. Order handling, number of orders, 8,000. Other overheads, 200,000. Note, other overheads would be recovered on labor hours required. Calculate cost per unit using activity-based costing. So, first of all, we have to calculate the cost driver rates. So, the first one, computation of cost driver rates. First, we have to calculate this one. So, we have for setup cost, we have to calculate the cost driver rates. What is the cost? The setup cost, 60,000, and we have to divide by what is the number of setups. What is the number of setups? 40 and 60. This will give us 100, and then we divide 600 per setup. This one. Second, we have to calculate for special handling parts, special handling parts. What is the cost for special handling parts? The cost 40,000, and it will be based on number of special parts. Number of special parts. Here we have number of special parts, 2 units, 2 per unit, 5 per unit. This one we have, this will give us 50,000. 50,000. Okay, we have to calculate it here. 2 fois 5,000 plus 2 fois 5 fois 8,000. 40, 10, ça nous donne 50,000. Donc, special handling parts, 40,000, we divide by 50,000, ça nous donne 0,8. 0,8 per special part, per part. And then we have to calculate for material handling costs. Material handling. What is the cost material handling? 35,000. It will be based on material handling number of batches. Number of batches we have 45 and 25. 45 and 25, this will give us 70. 45 plus 25, then we'll divide. This will give us 500 per batch. 500 per batch. And then we have order handling costs. This one we have completed. Let's see, order handling costs now. Order handling costs. Order handling costs. Order handling. What is it? Overhead for order handling costs with mill. And then it will be based on number of orders. Number of orders we have 30 and 80, 50. 30, this will give us 80. We'll divide, this will give us 100 per order. $100 per order. And then we have to calculate for other overheads. Other overheads. What is other overheads? 200,000. And then we have to, it will be based on labor hours. Now, other overheads will be recovered on labor hours. So what is the labor hours? We have labor hours 2 fois 5,000 plus, there we have 5 fois 8,000. Donc, we divide. Other overheads will give us 4 per direct labor hour. So first of all, we have to calculate the cost driver rates. We have already calculated the cost driver rates, and now we are going to see the total overheads. So we are going to see the second part of it, computation of overhead costs. So this one we are going to use activity-based costing. We have already calculated the cost driver rates. Now this one is very easy. We have to use the cost driver rates, then we'll multiply by the cost drivers. So setup cost, number of setups. So number of setups. So this cost, setup cost is how much? 60,000, and we have to allocate it based on number of setups, 40 and 60. We have already calculated the cost driver rates, so we have to allocate it, the cost driver rates 40, 600 times 40 and 600 times 60, then we get 24,000 and 36,000 for setup costs. A special handling cost will be based on number of special parts. This one also we have already calculated the cost driver. So we have to multiply 0.8 times 2 hours per unit time units 5,000, we get 8,000. 0.8 times 5 hours times 8 and 8,000, this will give us 32,000. So this one 40,000 will be allocated in this way. Material handling of it will be based on number of batches. This also we have already calculated the cost driver rates 45. The cost driver rates for materials handling. Materials handling, the cost driver rates 500. 500 times the cost times 45 number of batches. 500 times 25. This we get 22,500. 12,500. Here 22,500. Order handling, number of orders. This one also we have the number of orders 30 and 50. We just have to multiply it by the cost driver rates 100 and 100 times 30, 100 times 50. It will be divided in this way 3,000 and 5,000. Other overhead costs, this one 200,000. This one also we have already calculated the cost driver rates. Then we multiply it by the number of hours 2 hours and 5 hours time units. We can allocate it, current bill 40,000 and 160,000. Then we have to add 24,000, 8,000, 22,500, 3,000, 40,000. We add, we get the total overhead 97,500. And here also we add 36,000, 32,000, 12,500, 5,000, 160,000. This will give us 245,500. 245,500. And then the total, we have to add all these, we get 343,000. And now we have to calculate overhead cost per unit. Total overhead cost 97,500 over units 5,000. This will give us $19.5. 245,500 divided by 8,000 units. This will give us 30.7. This is the overhead cost per unit. Now to calculate the total cost, direct labor cost for A 60 and for B 80. Then we have to calculate the total cost. Direct labor cost has only been given 60 and 80. Overhead cost per unit we have calculated 19.5 and 30.7. We have to add both. We get 79.5 and 110.7. So here we are concerning the first part of the activity-based costing. We have already calculated the cost driver rates, and the second part we calculate the total overhead cost. And then if we are required to calculate cost per unit, what is the objective of cost activity-based costing to calculate cost per unit. So here we have cost per unit, total cost per unit, 79.5 and 110.7. So in the second example, in the second lesson, in the next lesson, we are going to see the theoretical part of it, cost driver, what is meant by cost driver rates, what is meant by activity-based costing, meaning, and so on. We will come back to see you again. Yes, today we are going to see a question on activity-based costing. Details of two products were given. Actual sales and production, 5,000 units for product A, 8,000 units for product B. Direct labor hours, 2 hours per unit for product A, and 5 hours per unit for product B. Number of orders, 30 orders for product A and 50 orders for product B. Number of batches, 45 for product A, 25 for product B. Number of setups, 40 for product A, 60 for product B. Special parts per unit, 2 for product A and 5 for product B. Overhead cost details were given. Activity, setups, cost driver, number of setups, 60,000. Special part handling, number of special parts, 40,000. Material handling, number of batches, 35,000. Order handling, number of orders 8,000, other overheads 200,000. Note, other overheads would be recovered on labor hours required. Calculate cost per unit using activity-based costing. So, first of all, we have to calculate the cost driver rates. So, the first one, computation of cost driver rates. First, we have to calculate this one. So, we have for setup costs. We have to calculate the cost driver rates. What is the cost? The setup cost 60,000, and we have to divide by what is the number of setups. What is the number of setups? 40 and 60. This will give us 100, and then we divide 600 per setup. This one. Second, we have to calculate for special handling parts. What is the cost for special handling parts? The cost 40,000, and it will be based on number of special parts. Here we have number of special parts, 2 units, 2 per unit, 5 per unit. This one we have, this will give us 50,000. Okay, we have to calculate it here. 2 fois 5,000 plus 5 fois 8,000. 40, 10, ça nous donne 50,000. Donc, special handling parts, 40,000, we divide by 50,000, ça nous donne 0,8 per special part, per part. And then we have to calculate for material handling costs. Material handling. What is the cost material handling? 35,000. It will be based on material handling number of batches. Number of batches we have 45 and 25. 45 and 25, this will give us 70. 45 plus 25, then we'll divide. This will give us 500 per batch. 500 per batch. And then we have order handling costs. This one we have completed. Let's see order handling costs now. Order handling costs. Order handling costs. Order handling. What is the overhead for order handling costs with mill? And then it will be based on number of orders. Number of orders you have 30 and 80, 50. 30, this will give us 80. We'll divide, this will give us 100 per order. $100 per order. And then we have to calculate for other overheads. What is the other overheads? 200,000. And then we have to, it will be based on labor hours. No other overheads will be recovered on labor hours. So what is the labor hours? We have labor hours 2 fois 5,000 plus, there we have 5 fois 8,000. Donc we divide, other overheads will give us 4 per direct labor hour. So first of all, we have to calculate the cost driver rates. We have already calculated the cost driver rates, and now we are going to see the total overheads